What up, my fellow NBA lovers? This is your guy, Marcellus Ease, and this will be Friends in the City Volume 4. And why I call it that? Because KD and Kyrie, like two good friends, are going to be put to the test when they move in with each other. Either the friendship is going to grow stronger or it could go completely disastrous. Now, James Harden found a way to slither his way into Kyrie and KD's apartment, and now he's the third roommate sleeping on the couch. Now, in this trade, a question I always ask myself, how calculated was James Harden? Because he chose the week that Kyrie chose to be absent to make his hard stance on not participating in anything that Houston has going forward. Now, the Nets, at the end of this deal, seemed like they were at the desperate end because come to find out that they had done a ton of pick swaps and they basically don't have any control of their draft picks all the way to 2028. You guys check out this segment, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Max Kellerman, you are up first. What were your first thoughts when you heard this went down?
So many. First, the Nets have to make the finals. They have to make the finals. Let's just assume for a second that Kyrie is on the team and will play for the Nets at some point this season. This is the only big three in the NBA. I don't mean they're two great players and here's their third best player. I mean big three. And whenever we've seen a big three, they at least make the finals. Celtics put...
at least when we see a big three, their games sort of fit each other. The only time there was an awkwardness in a big three was with LeBron James and D Wade sort of playing that point guard, shooting guard, kind of point forward role. One of those guys had to make a sacrifice. And in the second season in Miami, we found out that Dwayne Wade was willing to make that sacrifice and let LeBron James take the lead. Now, with Kyrie and James Harden, they're both guys that like to hold on to the ball. Kevin Durant is more of a system guy where you can fit him in. He can catch and shoot. But one of these guys, either Harden or Kyrie, will have to make that sacrifice.
Together, Pierce and Garnett and Ray Allen, they won. Even when Miami failed, they failed in the finals when they had LeBron and Wade and Bosh. There's no other big three. Two MVPs who are still at MVP level and a third guy in Kyrie Irving who...
Now, it's interesting they keep saying Kyrie Irving is a third guy. Kyrie Irving is an NBA champion who hit a clutch shot in a Game 7. James Harden has a bunch of meltdowns in the playoffs. He has never even reached the NBA Finals. All of a sudden, he's the third wheel. Now, understanding Houston, James Harden was given the green light to do him, to do all those dribble, and then just take a bunch of shots. Now, I'm not sure if Brooklyn even calculated that he can't even make those type of moves. He's not even going to have that many shot attempts like he had in Houston. There's other guys on the team that take up that usage.
More than just an all-star. He has MVP talent and achieves that all-star plus production. You have those three guys, you're supposed to get to the finals at least. And they had to make the deal. But earlier I said, no, you don't trade for James Harden, don't mess this up. But then Dinwiddie was lost for the season. So in fact, kind of counterintuitively, as you lost some depth, as the Nets lost depth, and
the Nets only lost one player. After making this trade, they definitely lost more depth. They lost Caris LeVert. They lost Jarrett Allen, which Jarrett Allen was playing much better, and he was playing 20 minutes a game, averaging a double-double, than, DeAndre Jordan. So DeAndre Jordan now, he's a lot older. He's less athletic, and he leaves the Nets a bit soft in the middle.
Ball handler in the backcourt, they actually had to lose more depth in order to get high-end talent to compensate. But they did lose depth. They lost Allen. They lost LeVert. And Houston got a haul.
And they also lost Taurean Prince, another supposedly 3-and-D guy. At least he's a serviceable player. They don't need him to do much, but at least he was a serviceable player.
4 firsts and 4 swaps? That's an amazing haul considering the leverage that Brooklyn had because Harden was out of there. And this is what I mean when I say superstars, Stephen A. in the league, have all the leverage. What do I mean by that? Well, they can sign where they want when their deal is up, LeBron, KD, whomever, right? And they go from team to team. But because...
Now, speaking of that, KD does have 2 years left on the Nets with a player option additional for the next year. So I'm wondering if this trade kind of secures Kevin Durant's future with the Brooklyn Nets, because this trade wouldn't have happened without somebody okaying this. And I doubt Kyrie Irving was the one that was pushing hard for the Nets to get James Harden.
Of that, Guys like AD, say whatever you want about how long it took. AD wanted to go to the Lakers. Where did he wind up? The Lakers. Say whatever you want to say about Harden and the ups and downs. He said he wanted to go to Brooklyn. Where do you wind up? Brooklyn. Let this be a lesson to the owners in case they didn't already understand. If you have a superstar, an MVP caliber player, he's going to wind up where he says he wants to go anyway. Make the best deal you can.
Not really. It depends how desperate the other team is. And this is where I keep posing this question. How desperate were the Nets to make this deal? I'm just looking at these pick swaps all the way to 2027. Just they must not be sure of Kyrie Irving right now, because this is not good that they even made a deal like this, knowing that Houston was on the desperate side of this deal. James Harden wanted out, so he no longer wanted to be there at all. I've never seen a situation where a team should have been at the losing end of a trade but end up gaining the most. Something's rotten in Denmark here.
Now, finally, Stephen A., they have their work cut out for them. Not only is this not a good defensive team right now, but they're not adding a guy who's like a stalwart defender, in the first place, in James Harden, though his defense till this year, we'll throw this out, has improved through the years. And also, there's only one ball. And while KD is a super great player, with or without the ball, doesn't matter, James Harden and Kyrie Irving both really need and want and like that ball.
Yes, perfect. Perfect that Max Kellerman had actually just mentioned this. So everyone got to ask themselves, the Brooklyn Nets traded all these picks. Even though they do have James Harden, a guy who can drop 40 points, get all these assists and rebounds or whatever, they're not going to get that output out of this guy. There's only a number of possessions in a game. The game has a time limit. They got other guys that need usage like Kevin Durant and Kyrie. The James Harden that they should get out of this deal is a guy who's going to average anywhere from 20 to about 24 points a game. There's no room for a James Harden that's going to average 30 points a game, 10 assists. Once again, I'm trying to understand, why did the Nets sacrifice so much just to get half the output out of this guy? At no fault of James Harden, on his own, but there's only so many possessions in a game.
So they have their work cut out for them, but this team is finals or bust this year.
Well, definitely finals or bust. We agree there. But what I would tell you is, as it pertains to what was on my mind when the deal was first announced, never has James Harden been under more pressure than he is this year. The same could be said for Kyrie Irving, whose career I believe is on the line. You have people looking at him and wondering whether he's worth the trouble. We know what an ultra-talented person he is. He's a superstar talent.
He's proven he is worth the trouble. I mean, you've seen how he fit perfectly with Durant. I mean, they have a slow start because of their defense, but I'm not sure if this James Harden situation kind of fixes that, because what are they going to do? Outscore the other team's defense? I'm still trying to understand the Nets swapping out all these picks just to get half the output for James Harden. Still trying to figure this out.
We get all of that. But guess what? Right now, he can't play better than me. You know why, Max? Because both of us are not on the court. He's somewhere else other than the Barclays Center, on the road with his team. I'm on television. He ain't doing anything on the court that I ain't doing, because neither one of us are there. Think about that and put that in its proper perspective. It does not matter how great you are if you don't put your greatness on display, and you don't appreciate your greatness to the point where you don't showcase it in the fashion that he is supposed to. In the case of James Harden, this is the deal. You in Houston, you wanted Dwight Howard, then you didn't. You wanted CP3, then you didn't. You wanted Russell Westbrook, then you didn't mind y'all parting ways, even though y'all are still boys. In the end, because Daryl Morey and Mike D'Antoni ended up going too.
Right there, Mike D'Antoni. Stephen A. Smith mentions the guy. I believe the reason why James Harden was pressing so hard to get to Brooklyn is to hide underneath that Mike D'Antoni system that allows him to do him. Because Brooklyn already has two stars that require so much usage, it's going to be very interesting to see if James Harden has to do something that he's never had to do in his career, and that's to move off ball and work within a system with two other guys that are pretty much going to be the captains over him. Even though he's probably more talented maybe than Kyrie, but Kyrie's already proven. We'll see how he maneuvers in that system. I believe Mike D'Antoni is going to provide a lot of cover for James Harden to design some sort of offensive scheme for him to do him.
You decided that you wanted out. Fair enough. But since you arrived in Houston and since you've averaged 25 a game every season in your career in Houston, 30 over the last 3 years, 29 over the last 4 minimum, 28 over the last 5 minimum. Now you're playing with a dude who's better than you in Kevin Durant, who is a flat-out superstar in this game. Fresh off an Achilles tear, 18 months out of action, first 8 games playing this season, averaging 29 a game on 54% shooting. There is no excuse for the Brooklyn Nets not to make it to the NBA Finals. And the likelihood is that if we look at them and they don't make it, it'll be because Harden didn't show up.
And because Giannis might end up busting their ass. That's if they don't make it. But one of the biggest losers in this trade is the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis. Keep that in mind.
Or Kyrie didn't show up, possibly literally. And so as a result of that, I thought about the pressure that these two have on their shoulders because Kevin Durant is leading the pack. Not only is he a superstar, he is one of the most unselfish superstars we've ever witnessed on the basketball court. This dude was averaging 28 a game, shooting 17 shots a game. Kyrie was averaging 26 and shooting 20 a game.
Now, let's also understand Kyrie is a proven player. At the end of the day, he's been to numerous finals with LeBron James, who is not an easy player to play with. As we've seen, Dwayne Wade had to completely switch up his game. Kyrie didn't really switch up his game being with LeBron. And then you saw in that game 7 how LeBron really trusted Kyrie to take that shot. He knew Kyrie could make that. So let's not make any mistakes there. James Harden is not a proven player in the playoffs. He has a lot of instances where we've seen him choke. And then quiet is kept. That 2019 defeat against the Golden State Warriors when KD went down, that's unreal. The Golden State Warriors had a very thin bench. They just had Curry and Thompson going up against CP3 and James Harden. And they fucking straight up mollywopped them in those 2 games.
So think about that for a second here. And if somebody's going to sacrifice, who's going to sacrifice and make sure that Kevin Durant doesn't have to sacrifice any more than he already has? That's the question mark in all of this. Kevin Durant, as long as he goes out there and plays the way that he plays, we're not going to look at him. We're going to look at Harden or Kyrie Irving, possibly both, because somebody's going to have to sacrifice somewhere. Chris Bosh was a third wheel at sacrifice. Ray Allen was a third wheel at sacrifice. Klay Thompson was a third wheel who sacrificed. Who's going to be that guy that makes the sacrifice for the Brooklyn Nets here?
It's going to have to be James Harden. He's the last guy to come on the team. Kyrie is the one that pretty much joined the Nets and started the momentum for the Nets to get players. And Kyrie is a proven champion. James Harden is a choke artist in the playoffs. He's going to have to become that third wheel. He's the last guy to join the team, and he's pretty much going to be the shooting guard of the team. Kyrie's going to stay being that point guard because he's a true point guard.
That's why Kyrie Irving and James Harden are so pivotal in all of this. And that's what I thought about, Max. That's what first came to my mind when I first learned that this deal was done.
Obviously, those thoughts are legit. Only thing I would add in terms of who the pressure's on, I think there's a lot of focus on Kyrie because he seems to be melting right now.
I don't believe he's melting right now. I believe, the league right now is in a very gray area. They're pulling guys in the middle of games who have the virus. So right now, their safety protocols aren't that great. And at the same time, they're beginning to lay down the law on a lot of guys regarding to things off the court. Example, spending time with your family. They're telling players what to do, how to do it, how many people that they could spend time with off the court and out of work. That's a very gray area right now.
James Harden, because, okay, James, you want Dwight Howard, you want Russell Westbrook, you want Chris Paul, you want Russell Westbrook. Now, after a year, it doesn't work out. You want to go to Brooklyn. You're joining 2 other superstars. You better win. But in fact, Stephen A., think about who the best player on the team is. I think there's actually the most pressure on KD, strangely, because LeBron, wherever he goes, figures out a way to make it work. It's not just that he has supernatural passing ability.
And he also gets top talent. Let's make no mistake about it. AD is one of the best players in the league. He finished at least top 4 in MVP votes last season. And then he played with D Wade and Chris Bosh. D Wade is one of the all-time shooting guards. If not, it's Jordan, D Wade. I mean, it's Jordan, Kobe, and D Wade as, the all-time shooting guards. Those are the only 3 guys in the modern era who led their team at the shooting guard position into a championship. Let's make no mistake about it. LeBron James has always played with top-level talent.
He knows how to lead a group of guys to the promised land. Whether or not they actually win the championship, he gets them there. Basically, every single year. New teammates, a malcontent, doesn't matter. He gets you to the championship, and you have a shot to win it when you have LeBron James. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson led teams to championships. Kobe Bryant led teams to championships, even after Shaq. Kevin Durant, his package as a player matches maybe favorably with anyone I just mentioned. He's taller, he's fast, he shoots at least as well as anyone I just mentioned, maybe.
And we've seen how Golden State broke down as soon as he left. They really needed him to continue doing what they were doing. When the rest of the league caught up to what they were doing, and then they got Durant, that really helped them out continuing dominating the league.
Better. There's nothing Kevin Durant can't do. His passing game has gotten better. He can defend multiple positions. He took a brave move after one that was considered really like he's trying to, carpet bag his way to championships. He's trying to latch on to a 73-win team. That was weak, right? This was so strong. Going to New York, going to Brooklyn, and trying to lead a team after an Achilles to a championship. But that's the point, Stephen A. If it doesn't work out, even if it's Kyrie or if it's Harden that we can see, well, really, this guy wasn't behaving or this guy wasn't playing defense, the bottom line is it's KD who will have failed to do what LeBron did and what Magic and Bird did and Kobe did for so much of their careers, and obviously Michael Jordan. None of the guys I just mentioned is a superior package of basketball skill and talent and size than Kevin Durant. Now it's time for him to show that other component to his game, that he can lead a team, a talented team, to at least the finals.
I'm hoping that James Harden doesn't end up Russell Westbrooking Durant, a.k.a. not understanding that, hey, this guy you have on your team is the lethal piece that you need, so get him going. Stop doing you and pay attention and get this guy going, because that's how you're going to win.
Well, that lengthy soliloquy notwithstanding, here's the reality of the situation, Max Kellerman. Tell me one time where LeBron James has had to deal with dual personalities like that. We're talking about Kyrie Irving, and we're talking about a guy in James Harden that was once the face of a franchise for the better part of the last decade, who could dribble the ball and hold on to the ball and be ball dominant over and over again with impunity. You got to think about it from that perspective. And the fact that the two of those individuals are now on the same team, and him and Kyrie Irving, cannot be ignored. I would submit to you that under no circumstance, at no time in LeBron James' career, I know that he had Kyrie and I know there were other dudes to deal with, but in terms of their cachet, their abilities, combined with the style of play that they have, there is no one that would be especially LeBron James. He hasn't had to deal with that duo. He might have had one of those dudes. He hasn't had to have two of them on the same team, particularly when he was new to the team. That wasn't him when he goes to Miami. You got D Wade there. You go back to Cleveland, you come back as a champion, and it's just Kyrie, a young Kyrie who hadn't won anything yet, as you articulated on many occasions, Max, that you had to inherit and teach on how to win and things of that nature. Then, obviously, you know what? You go to L.A., and when you go to L.A., you don't really have a team as of yet, and then you get Anthony Davis, okay? LeBron James hasn't had, in terms of from a personality perspective, he hasn't had a James Harden and a Kyrie Irving to deal with. So I would take that into consideration.
Yeah, that's a good point by Stephen A. Smith. This is a lot of personalities to juggle. And once again, like I said, with the roommate analogy, these three guys all living together, they're really going to start understanding each other on a different level because they're basically roommates. It's going to be more personal. And it's either this is going to make their bond stronger or this thing is going to blow up bad.
I would say that's a bit unfair. I know that KD got the challenge, But it's a bit unfair to compare it to LeBron and say, well, LeBron did it, so you got to do it too in that situation. I don't agree with that.
Now, also with the Brooklyn Nets, they have an image issue right now. They got KD, which is still viewed as an unlikable player because of the Golden State move, which is really overrated. I don't know why he's not liked because of that. LeBron James shouldn't get liked because of the Miami Heat situation. It's the same thing. And also, Kyrie Irving, of course, isn't viewed favorably, especially by the Boston media, which is a large segment of the NBA media. They still have it out for him. And of course, James Harden now, he's viewed as a spoiled brat. So with the Steve Nash hiring of the Brooklyn Nets, they kind of softened their image through him a little bit. But now they really have a real image issue because their stars right now, they may be good at what they do, but they're not viewed favorably by the public.
All right, let me ask you guys this, and Max, I'll come to you here. So Kyrie Irving obviously didn't play last night. He hasn't played in the last 5 games due to personal reasons. What should we expect from him?
I think when Kyrie gets back, and by the way, the next game he misses will mean that in his Nets tenure, he will have missed twice as many games as he's played. He hasn't been durable, and even when he's been physically healthy, sometimes he hasn't been available, and maybe because of his behavior off the court, he won't be available even if his personal issues are settled to the point where he can play and he's physically ready. I mean, that's a lot of lack of availability from Kyrie. But let's say by the All-Star break.
Yeah, so far, that's beginning over time till now. It's starting to look like an issue. And I believe with this trade, it's our first kind of peek through the door of what the Nets are really thinking. Because once again, the Houston Rockets were on the desperate side of this trade. And in a very calculated move, because it's not ironic that James Harden had a blow up this week to force his way out of Houston, that he chose the same week where Kyrie was absent for the Nets. And the Nets giving up all those pick swaps. It's just showing you that they may not be sure about this Kyrie situation.
All that stuff is squared away, and he's playing with this team. Kyrie has shown in the past that whether he's on ball or off ball, he is capable of playing with another ball-dominant. I mean, you want to call LeBron a backcourt player, a front-court player. LeBron runs your offense. He's played with a guy like that and has had to play off-ball at times and has also been, the primary ball handler at times. Kyrie has already shown that he's capable of playing with a guy like that. Now, LeBron is a more generous passer because he's a more brilliant basketball mind in that respect than James Harden, and probably that made it easier.
They're almost similar, but in a way, of course, LeBron James is more athletically gifted and his IQ is a lot higher, especially in crucial situations. But their playing style is almost the same. These guys have the ball in their hands nonstop, and the numbers that they put up, it should be really good numbers as it is. 28 points per game, over 7 rebounds, 7 assists, especially in a league today where guys are hardly playing defense, the pace is up, guys are taking a lot more three-point shots.
For Kyrie Irving. But I do expect, at least on offense, for the potential for Kyrie to fit in with Harden and KD.
Kyrie is the person that we should all keep our eyes on. And we should all keep our eyes on because, in reality, Kyrie Irving is going to be the third option on this team. And
I don't know about that, Stephen A. Smith. Once again, James Harden is the last wheel to join the team. And also, he's not a proven player in the playoffs. And we also have to factor in that Kyrie Irving started the momentum for the Brooklyn Nets to start acquiring stars.
The question is, how receptive is he going to be to that? We don't know. We know that Kyrie's a superstar talent. We know that he's got the nastiest handling skills in basketball. As far as I'm concerned, he's box office. When he wants to play, he is worth paying to.
Now, when Stephen A. Smith starts talking like that, giving you a bunch of compliments, he's going to shit on you at the end of it. But Stephen A. Smith has to take into account that we're not going to see that James Harden that we saw in Houston, a guy that gets the ball nonstop, who doesn't really value his possessions, gets to make a lot of mistakes. And at the end of the day, even if he makes a lot of mistakes, having 8 turnovers plus, he still finishes the game with over 30 points. That's not going to happen here. He has to value his possessions. There's other guys that's going to take shots and take up usage. So we'll see how James Harden performs under those circumstances. We already have a few examples of it in the playoffs where we see James Harden in key situations where you have to value your possessions, not be as efficient.
See play. But I'm going to tell you, Max, what I heard yesterday. I was reminded yesterday, and I read part of the quote to you on the air, where I was told that, listen, he keeps this up, the Brooklyn Nets may have the power to void his contract. Now, do I think something like that is going to happen? No. I do not believe that's going to happen. I don't think Kevin Durant's going to let that happen. I think Kevin Durant loves him too much. He values him too much. He respects him too much. He wants him there. That's not going to happen. And I do believe that Kyrie Irving, because Kevin Durant is his friend, in the end is not going to let KD down. I truly believe that.
Not yet. Once again, my analogy, friends in the city. Once these guys move in together, that's when they're going to start to see the real person. And it's either their friendship is going to grow and, be stronger through the ups and downs, or this shit's going to blow up.
But that does not mean we get to negate mentioning what has transpired thus far. What has transpired thus far is that he's left them to hang and dry. Not just KD, but the Brooklyn Nets as an organization, being very unpredictable. He's healthy.
No, not really. We don't know what's going on, but all we know this week also, which Stephen A. Smith is failing to mention, is that the league's safety protocols have been readjusted, and the league has been struggling due to the surge in this pandemic of just keeping players safe. Right now, things are still murky. Even the competition level is still kind of cloudy because the standings are being affected, and now we're seeing teams out there playing with guys that normally play in the bench. They're playing those guys 40 minutes plus, and they have to readjust some of the rules about how many players a team can carry. So right now, the league is in a real murky area.
He's not playing. He's healthy. He's not playing. He's on social media, caught on social media, partying with family members. And
see, right there is a gray area what Stephen A. Smith is talking about. Partying with family members. You mean he's celebrating family members' birthdays? In the league right now, according to their policy, if there's over a certain number of family members in attendance, you cannot go. Now, that's a very gray area right now because you're telling players how to spend their time outside of work, especially with their family members. That's real murky. Any average person in their job that's not getting paid millions of dollars would have a major issue with their job telling them how to live outside of work, especially when it comes to family members.
Friends. He's on social media doing stuff for social justice issues, which we all appreciate and respect, particularly as Black people in this nation. And we definitely owe him a debt of gratitude for, and his charitable tendencies. The WNBA can speak to that along with various others. His heart is clearly in the right place. But the focus, the discipline, the determination comes along with being a star of a franchise and doing your job first. He has clearly not mastered that. And so because of it, you have to look at him and wonder what's going to happen, because what is the Brooklyn Nets as an organization supposed to tolerate? And dare I say, Max, what is the NBA supposed to tolerate? What kind of messages is sent? If you remember, Max, I told you years ago, the only thing that I lamented about with LeBron James when he made the announcement, I'm taking my talents to South Beach, how he handled things with Dan Gilbert, owners remembered that came CBA negotiation time.
And also players remember how Dan Gilbert ran after LeBron like a runaway slave with that letter. Now the NBA thought that letter was fake when they initially saw it, and they couldn't believe that Dan Gilbert really wrote that letter. But they had to double check and verify that it was Dan Gilbert himself. The league didn't expect a backlash, but definitely they were really surprised.
And you never can ignore that, because usually it's not the individual player that gets his comeuppance down the road. It's the players that have less value, and the hammer is brought down on the collective whole because of the actions of a few.
And we also got to talk about the actions of James Harden. Best believe the way James Harden has acted the past few months, especially on that Supermax contract, the owners, when it comes to coming back to that table for that collective bargaining agreement, they're going to put the hammer on that supermax. There's going to be a lot of stipulations. They may even put little loopholes where players will end up getting that supermax contract voided if they no longer want to be on these teams. You never know.
Never know with this stuff, and you got to pay attention to it.
Well, look, Kyrie has to look himself in the mirror right now because the fact is, you're right to point this out, which you kind of alluded to. In Cleveland, he was the second best player in a big three. Now, he is the third best player in a big three.
Once again, Max, you're assuming James Harden is going to be allowed to do him in Brooklyn. He's going to have to operate in a system, a brand new system, in which he has to value his possessions because he's not going to get to hold the ball nonstop in every possession and be allowed to have 8+ turnovers and still get his 36 points per game.
That's a little different. But the reason I say he has to look at himself in the mirror is, who do you think is a better shooter, Harden or Kyrie? The answer, by the numbers, is Kyrie. He shoots the three better. Of course, Harden takes a lot more of them. He shoots free throws a little better. Although, again, Harden takes more of them. And in terms of finishing in the paint under the rim, I think Kyrie is the best I've ever seen. Certainly, he's on a very, very short list. So from Kyrie Irving's point of view, he's like, actually, when you break down the skills, how is this dude better than me? But he is, and that's universally acknowledged, and Kyrie has to ask himself why. Now,
I still don't understand. Once again, a lot of these guys, especially Max Kellerman, they're tied to the Daryl Morey analytics. And James Harden is the perfect piece, but it's been proven that he does not work at all. He's had Dwight Howard, CP3, Russell Westbrook. I mean, the league rules favored him, and he still didn't even get to an NBA Finals. So a lot of the love that James Harden gets, it comes from being attached to Daryl Morey, and Daryl Morey being attached to that analytical crowd that says, hey, even though I didn't play in the NBA, respect what I say because the math agrees with me over guys who actually played in the league and have a different understanding, a more personal understanding of certain nuances in the game.
as far as James Harden's concerned, Stephen A., he's the dude who's going to have to be sacrificing, in fact, because really Harden's greatness is this. A lot of guys shoot the three as well or better than him, at least by the numbers, free throws too, all that stuff. Harden's greatness really comes out. His usage is so high. He plays so many minutes. He's involved so much in the offense, and yet he's able to maintain those rates. Usually, if you shoot from three or free throws a certain level, especially from three, the more you shoot it, maybe that's going to go down a little because you're taking tough shots, you're shooting a lot of them. Harden's doesn't at all.
Max.
A lot of his value is that kind of stuff, how he can fill it up. He's the one, Stephen A., who's going to be giving up touches that he normally wouldn't be giving up,
Max,
more than Kyrie.
I spoke to two coaches yesterday, and I'll end the segment by saying this, Molly. I spoke to two coaches yesterday. They laughed at them being in Brooklyn. They said, all the talent in the world, let's see what Kyrie does. Will he even be there, Stephen A.? And they left it at that. That's
Stephen A., let me ask you one thing real quick. You recall, I'm sure, and this is right before my time, when Earl the Pearl Monroe got traded to the Knicks from Washington and joined Clyde Frazier, and Clyde Frazier, very different personality than Kyrie Irving, of course. The whole question in New York basketball is, how are these two dudes, right, Black Jesus and Clyde Frazier, going to share the ball? There's only one ball. They won a championship together. It's not impossible.
It's not impossible.
Because one of those guys are willing to sacrifice. We'll see which one of these guys will be willing to sacrifice, but I believe it's going to be James Harden. He's going to have to sacrifice because he's going to definitely have to play that shooting guard role, and he's going to have to value his possessions.
Possible, but you got to want to work. They wanted to work. They wanted to show up to work.
And the Brooklyn Nets are going to have to further, elaborate what's going on with Kyrie. Something is going on there, but you never know. They could actually be in agreement because, once again, Kyrie was just out celebrating with family. It's not like he was doing what James Harden was doing, going to strip clubs and turning up with rappers or people that were just friends. Kyrie was actually celebrating his father and his sister's birthday during a pandemic where the league rules basically told him, because right now the league rules are in a gray area, it basically told him that he can't celebrate with his family, which is very, very murky. It's a very murky situation, telling players what to do outside of work.
work. You got to want to come to work.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Steve Nash certainly has his work cut out for him. An enviable position, a lot of talent, but we'll see how the chemistry plays out. And it's a
You know, that's true. That's true. With Steve Nash, once again, I said his image, because he's very likable, it kind of brought the Nets, likability a little bit higher. But right now, the Nets have 3 players that are not viewed favorably by the media. The media still has it out for Kevin Durant, particularly the Bay Area media, because he had left them dry. Same thing for Kyrie Irving. The Boston NBA media is a very large portion of the NBA media. They still have it out for Kyrie. And a lot of media members that love LeBron James do not like the way Kyrie left Cleveland. So when you have all those factors, these guys have a lot going against them perception-wise from the media, because they're always going to draw up the perception. But we'll see how this plays out. It is what it is. Until next time, you guys stay safe. Peace.